So one of the things that we consider in the functional breathing world is the level of carbon dioxide in our blood and what happens during exercise. So many consider or taught or trained, many trainings out there will teach that what tends to happen during exercise is that CO2 levels rise and that causes us to breathe faster, causes us to breathe deeper. And this is a response to rising carbon dioxide levels. However, that's not quite correct. Then it's very nuanced when it comes to exercise hypopnea, in that we have feed-forward systems that are predictive, we have feedback systems, we have systems that kind of fine-tune things. And what this video really is going to demonstrate is just a very simple breakdown of what happens when I get on a bike. I measure my CO2 levels at the end of a breath using end-tidal carbon dioxide, a technique called capnography. And during this exercise, I was doing a minute on at a reasonable pace on a bike, and then 2 minutes rest, and then 3 minutes on, 2 minutes rest, 5 minutes on, 2 minutes rest, and then back down to 3 minutes and 2 minutes rest, and back down to 1 minute and then 2 minutes rest. And unfortunately, during the screen recording, my screen went off, and so we lost the capnography for the second half, but we do have 10 minutes of a clip to go through, and I am just going to vocalize over the top of this and just give some scientific interpretation of what's actually happening to my breathing in real time when I'm on this bike, change my intensity. So I hope you enjoy this video. Of course, if you do, subscribe, leave a comment, and yeah, let's dive straight in. So here we are starting round one, minute on, minute off, and the end-tidal carbon dioxide is currently sat around about bang on 35 millimeters of mercury. So this would be perfect levels of CO2. There was no anticipation here, no over-breathing to begin with. And you can see straight away on this graph on the right hand side, the peak is starting to elevate. And so it's picking up very slowly. That is likely because of the production of carbon dioxide at the level of the muscles. Here I'm pushing a pace that is definitely above the lactate threshold. And so it is a minute steady intensity. And so we can see end-tidal carbon dioxide levels rising. If this is true CO2 levels, I don't think so. I don't think this is true CO2 levels increasing at all. What I think this is what we call respiratory artifact. And so this is because of a larger tidal volume. My breathing rate was only about 20 breaths per minute. But because of the increased tidal volume, we are diluting dead space, and we're actually getting a representation of venous return gas here. And so the CO2 levels are actually a reflection of what is being produced and directly breathed back out. And so you can probably see my respiratory rate has actually increased whilst I have started to slow the pace down. Now, this is probably for a couple of reasons. The cadence at which I drop the pace down during light cycling, it makes my legs spin a fair bit faster, and that's probably in training a bit of a faster breathing pattern, if I'm honest with you. You can still see that the carbon dioxide levels are sustained elevated at the end of the breath. We're now looking at near 40, which no, 45, sorry, which would be classified as hypercapnic. Like I say, I don't think this would be a true representation of the level of carbon dioxide that is in my blood at the moment. So we are just currently going through 2 minutes of light cycling, and then we're going to do a round of 3 minutes where we start to pick up the intensity again. And then finally we'll be going through another 2 minute recovery, and then we've only got 10 minutes of this. In fact, my laptop screen went off when I was doing a screen recording, and so the whole exercise got cut in half. It went blank, so we don't have it at all, but let's continue. We're going to be going off again in 25 seconds for the next moment, and we're going to see some changes here. So in this first recovery phase, the end-tidal carbon dioxide has raised, whilst the respiratory rate is pretty much stable. What that means is that there is a deeper tide of volume, and as I say, reducing that dead space, making it diluted, mixing that CO2 from the venous blood samples, and therefore we're getting a reflection of what's going on in the venous blood that's coming back from the working muscles. So we're now picking up again, going into a 3 minute phase now, to the second high intensity phase. You can see that actually I'm just trying to stay completely relaxed here, observing what I'm doing, but just trying to make my breathing as relaxed as possible. Try not to control it, just trying to allow it to happen. I am quite clearly not someone who has amazing form on cycling, but what I'm actually trying to do here is I'm just trying to relax that torso, try not to tense my shoulders up, try not to tense my arms up, just allowing my body to move a little bit And that just allows my breathing to feel a little bit more free. And so during the second high intensity phase, we start to see the end-tidal carbon dioxide coming back down again. And the respiratory rate again stays similar. We're probably dropping from 20 breaths per minute to 19.5 breaths per minute, which is nothing really. But here we're getting into that optimal efficiency of breathing. The feedback that we've got from our chemoreceptors to help stabilize CO2 levels that are essentially making a change in tidal volume again, slight adjustments, is creating stability in our CO2 levels. So at this pace, this is a pace that my ventilation, so the air that's coming in, is matching the blood that is also coming into the lungs as well. So we've got great matching with ventilation and perfusion matching here, and therefore CO2 levels are just completely stable. This is classical functional breathing, mouth closed, relaxed, nasal breathing at a pace that I could probably sustain, if I'm honest with you, for 60, 90, 2 hours if I just didn't get bored of exercise at that low intensity and just being on a mono. I know it's good for you. I know it does a lot for the heart and a lot for recovery and also a lot for just functional breathing. But yeah, my God, is it boring. So we're going to come up now to the end of this phase here, and we're going to have a bit of a recovery phase again. And just notice what tends to happen with my breathing. And this just happens to me often, is that I'll be during an effort, I'll be there, I'll be focused on relaxing. And then when I shift the gear back down again, which will happen in the next 15 seconds, I tend to just completely lose focus and just adjust myself, and my breathing rate tends to rocket up. And so we're going to see that occur in a moment. So at the end of the 3 minutes there, taking the pace off, and just look at the respiratory rate picking up, CO2 levels coming back down again. So there's an element of a little bit of hyperventilation now. It's not complete hyperventilation. It's probably likely because I'm starting to take shorter, shallower breaths, increased respiratory rate, that now we're getting a true reflection of the CO2 level in the blood. We're getting a bit of diluted air mixing in, so the carbon dioxide levels are now reflecting what would be in the alveoli, and therefore a pretty good indicator of what the carbon dioxide levels were in the blood. But still, we're bang on. We're looking at 40 millimeters of mercury. Perfect. This is absolutely spot on breathing. This is like biochemical and mechanics just aligning completely with what is needed during exercise. And what am I doing? Nothing other than relaxing. I'm not controlling. I'm not trying to slow down. Mouth closed, just trying to stay relaxed and just keeping the legs moving. And I don't think we're going to get an opportunity to have a full look at this final 5 minute intense period. So we're going to give another 30 seconds, and then we've got 3 minutes of this video left where I'm just going to talk you through what happens in this longer intense period of exercise. So CO2 levels now on the gas analysis, pretty much spot on. The respiratory rate around about 22, so really isn't changing, and that's just because I'm not getting a massive increase in sympathetic activity. But you can see I do get a bit of anticipation here. There is a little bit of hyperventilation start to occur there. The CO2 levels are starting to drop as that peak is just getting a little bit lower. And that is just because I know that there is exercise about to come. Therefore, my brain starts to anticipate and starts to pick up the breathing pace a little bit. And now, as soon as we start moving, those chemoreceptors are then just starting to change that tidal volume again. You can see by the width of that curve as it gets a little bit wider, it's just fine tuning the depth that I breathe at to get the CO2 levels back into a good position again. So not low CO2, but now we're just bang on. And that's what chemoreceptors are typically for. They're there to stabilize and fine tune tidal volume relative to the respiratory rate and to keep that stable. And so there we go. Functional breathing across a range of different intensities. Now, the first minute there, we're hitting splits about 1 minute 36 for 1,000 meters. The second split was about 1 minute 49, and then this one here, the longest one, I usually typically around about 1 minute 57. And I can push that more, but I just wanted to really pay attention here. Again, finalizing and finishing here with just end-tidal carbon dioxide, bang on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, a little bit of insight in terms of how breathing and your your respiration, your chemistry can be stabilized using end-tidal carbon dioxide. And perhaps I'll do this again, looking at some other forms of exercise in the near future. So that's just a little snippet of what we can do with capnography and just some small nuanced insights into what was happening with my breathing during that, which, to be honest with you, wasn't a lot because it wasn't massively intense. I felt quite regulated and calm, and therefore my breathing was good, very functional breathing. And so if you're interested to learn more about this, check out our community, check out our training in the links below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you next time.